Hello and welcome to Liz at Home. Today I'm really excited to share with you the most beginner guide to watercolor that I think you can find. I've been asked by one of the subscribers to my channel to please explain the very beginnings of watercolor, and it can be such an overwhelming thing to want to start with something and actually not knowing at all where to begin and how is everything. And I remember so clearly the first time I walked into an art shop and I'd thought to myself, oh, I want to start with watercolors. And I walked in and I saw all of these brushes and things all of a sudden, all in front of me, piles and piles of brushes. And I saw paints and I saw pencils and I saw everything, and my heart beat fast and I just didn't know what to do. And I also felt a bit embarrassed because here was I, a 60-something lady, walking into something and feeling completely overwhelmed and not knowing what I wanted. And the assistant very nicely said, "Can I help you?" I walked into an actual art shop and I said, no, thanks, I'm just looking. And I didn't know what I was looking for, and I walked right out again. So with that in mind, I'm going to start at the very beginning, a very good place to start, because I've been asked to do that. So now, step number one, I've plonked all of these things here because I need all of them to show you what they are somewhere later on in this. But to start, when you first want to start with watercolors, perhaps you see a set and you see maybe the set of tubes, because watercolors come in different forms and formats. They come in tubes, and often you'll get the tubes in sets. These are different types, and you also get student grade, children's, and artist grade watercolors. So I have bought very few sets of tube watercolor paint. I tend to have bought single colors or like a set of 4, and then I've taken them all out of the set and plonked them all in an ice cream container, so all my tubes are together. But the tubes themselves come in different sizes. The one that most artists use is a 15 milliliter tube, but like one tube like this is Daniel Smith Watercolor, and it's quite an expensive watercolor. It's made in the United States, and a tube like this in South Africa can set you back about between 300 and 400 rand for this one color. So it's really expensive. I got quite a few of my lovely Daniel Smiths from a very kind friend that brings them back for me. I order them at Dick Blick in the States and then send them to her daughter's house, and she brings them back when she's gone to visit. So I don't have to pay quite as much because I'm not paying all the import duties. Daniel Smith also comes in 5 milliliter tubes, which I've got many more of. Then I bought this. It's by a maker called Venezia, which I bought at the Italian shop, which is a shop in Rondebosch in Cape Town, which sells lots of lovely paints. And very easily attainable are Lucas watercolors, which are more of a student grade, but I think some professional artists do use them. You can get these at P&A and at many of the art shops in the Cape Town, in the country. And you can get these Winsor and Newton Cotman watercolors. The Cotman Winsor Newton makes professional watercolors, and which also come in 15 milliliter and then 5 milliliter tubes if you're lucky. This I've just bought, this one tube. It's my first Winsor and Newton. I just got 2 professional watercolors, 249 rand per tube. I mean, that is mind-boggling. The Cotman, being the student brand, are also expensive but less expensive. Then you can get liquid watercolors. I only own this one liquid watercolor. It happened to come in an art subscription box. And then you can buy sets of watercolors that come like this. These come in little pans in a little palette, not as single colors. And then you can get empty pans, and you can, like an empty palette, and you can fill them with your tube watercolors, or you can buy single pans of a color. I need to take this out here to show you. You can buy, like, these are 2 Winsor & Newton Cottoman single half pans. It's called a half pan. You get a double size one that's a full pan that you can also buy and then put into pallets. Now, the lady that asked me to tell her how to start with watercolors has a number of tubes. 1 second while I have a sip of my tea. Was not quite sure how to store them. And my advice, what I've done is I've bought empty palette boxes like this with half pans in them, which are not so easy to get. So what you can do is get any tin. This I actually got paints in, but any tin with a lid, and then you buy, and you can get it at Art Savings Club and at a place called Brush and Canvas. I'll put links, and if you happen to be in America, definitely at Blicks. You can get sets of empty half pans, and then you store these in here. And what I've done is I've put a little magnetic strip underneath. So I buy a thing of magnetic strip, and it's got self-adhesive on the back. Cut it to size. These were little blocks that I bought. And then I cut it to size, stick it on there, and I usually stick it with an extra piece of double-sided tape because the adhesive on here is not all that strong. And then I've got a whole lot of empty half pans, and I can add my paints from the tube in that. That's one way of doing it with your tube paints. And that is really what I would suggest. Then they're in a palette and they're easy to store. The other thing you can do with your tube paints is to use any number of palettes. So you can buy a cheap little round palette like this, and you can, let me find one I'm not that keen on, because this is to me a bit of a waste. You can use a little bit in there, and then you can use some water. Obviously with watercolor you need water. Wet your brush and got your paint, and you can paint with it. But now, say you've made up a big mixture for yourself and there's half of that left. You're left with all of these little empty mixing trays, and you're not quite sure what to do with it. So I've got a porcelain palette also, which is nice to use. And the other thing you can do with these is use a butcher's tray. This is an enamel butcher's tray. You can also buy palettes like this. I've seen them at many shops, and again, worldwide you can get them. And they open, let me zoom out a little bit here. They come and open like this, and then they have wells where you can put paint. And then they have mixing trays. I've seen a very popular YouTuber, Emma Lefebvre. She does some really, really good watercolor tutorials, and she uses one of these, and what people then do is they squeeze into there and then they mix over here, and then they leave the paint here, leave it to dry, and then you close your palette and you store the things like that. I've thought of trying that, but what can happen is the paint can dry and it can fall out, or this, it's not too bad because this going over here is not going to mix with this, but these ones here could mix here, so I wouldn't use these particular trays. So I'm in a minor quandary about that, and I don't have enough money to waste paint, so I'm not going to try that right now and see. But well, actually I can just with one paint. Again, this Lucas Indigo. I'm sorry, Lucas Indigo, you're not my favorite paint. So what I would do is squeeze the paint in there and leave that. I would also make a swatch chart for myself, and I like to know what the brand is that I've got, and say that that's indigo, so that I know when I open this that I've got that there. So this would dry, but now I'm going to leave this palette so long, and I'm going to come back and zoom in just a fraction again for you. And I want to show you, once you have your paints in your palette, so now all of these paints, I love this palette, but again, you can't get it in South Africa. It's just also little magnetic strips on the bottom of these in a pretty tin. I've drawn myself, I need to get it the right way around, little swatch chart there so I know what's what, and I have the paints there. What you do with that then is, when I'm about to start paint, you can just take your watercolor brush and go straight in with a color. So let's find a pretty color, shall we? This is a Winsor & Newton Cotman Mauve, and you can paint straight on your paper, but you're not sure what you're going to get. I've still got some of the indigo. See how pretty those two mix. What I would normally do is take a little spray bottle, have my whole palette there with all my half pans in there, and I just spray them. So that starts to get the paint waking up. Then I would wet my brush in my water. I have, usually, this is the other thing, usually have two receptacles of water, two vessels of water, one for me for the dirty paint and one for the to rinse your brush off. That becomes the dirty one. I always use this one for that, and one if I need clean water, or once that has got very dirty, to do a final rinse. So having sprayed this palette with some water to get the paint activated, I'm now using the little round plastic palette, and you'll see that you get much more color on after the dry paint has been activated. Look at the richness of that pigment, and then add a little bit of extra water to that from the dry palette, from that, and then you can add extra water either with a little plastic dropper bottle or dropper, or with your brush, and then using that paint you can use a rich pigment onto your paper, and you can then get different values of that color by dipping your brush into the water, wiping it off at the side, taking the excess water off on some paper towel and putting that onto the paper, and then repeating the process. So my recommendation for how to use the tube paints you've bought, the most economical way to do that is to purchase an empty palette or empty half pans and magnetic strips and a tin. Place your wet tube colors, each a different color, into each empty half pan. Make a swatch chart for yourself. Leave them to dry overnight, and then whenever you want to paint, you've got them there, and you can activate some and use a cheaper little round palette or a plate or a butcher's tray and paint from that, and then your paints will last much longer and you can refill your half pans when you're ready to. So thank you so much for watching me play with watercolors, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you found value in it, I really would appreciate a like and subscribing to my channel, and I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you and goodbye.